I like this song a lot. Listen to it if you can. This is B.B. King. He's the background. I forget the name of the other group. Primitive Radio Gods. Really great song. Okay, well, we'll stop with that. That's a great song. I really enjoyed it, or enjoy that one. Okay, moving on. This is our focus for part 6. We've got, we want to make sure that we get through the war. We're going to get through a bunch of the war and give you the big overview. Again, the war is not going to be, is really secondary, but I think it's worth your time if you really want to learn and have a clear understanding. I think it's important. So we get the Second Continental Congress. The First Continental Congress stops at 1775. Lexington is April 1775. The Second Continental Congress meets, I think, July or June 75. This is the big one. This is the important Congress that you need to know. First Continental Congress, who cares? They meet. It's unity. The second one gets tons done. The Second Continental Congress is the one that gets, look at this. We do the Olive Branch Petition. It does the Declaration of Independence. It creates the Articles of Confederation, etc., etc. So this is the big one. You got to know the Second Continental Congress. That's important. Olive Branch Petition, again, that's a petition to the king. We'll talk about that. We're going to look at an essay question today and reinforce that. We're going to talk about Loyalists. We're going to talk about financing the war. We're going to talk about advantages and disadvantages and the 3 phases of the war, which is the overview. All right, so the Second Continental Congress is meeting in Philadelphia, and they do a lot of things. So important achievements. Look at this. They appoint and select George Washington to lead the military. He goes to the Second Continental Congress. He's elected by Virginia. He's wearing a uniform. Oh man, there's a great part of the video on this with John Adams' video that's really worth your time to look at. You want to see a great depiction of George Washington. They start to raise money. That's another achievement. They raise money. They create an army, an official, formal Continental Army. The Second Continental Congress lasts through 1781 when they start the Articles of Confederation, which takes over as the first independent government of the United States. We have the second one, which is called the U.S. Constitution, and that's what we're going to also deal with later on. But other achievements, the Olive Branch Petition, we're going to talk about, Declaration of Independence, and then, of course, the Articles of Confederation. Now, here is the seal of the United States. And this is where I want to talk about the olive branch. And you see the, what is that? The arrows. Again, look at the symbolism here. Firstly, an eagle is a bird of prey. You know what that means? It's a bird of prey. It eats meat. It kills things for its sustenance. It's a very aggressive and warlike symbol. You also look at the shield. The shield is used in war. E pluribus unum, one among many. One among many. And then you got the 13 stars, represents the 13 original colonies. Again, 13 stripes, etc. Arrows, war, aggression, defense, whatever. In the talons, remember, the talons are the weapons of the eagle, as well as the beak, which is for shredding meat. And then on this side, you have this olive branch. And the olive branch was a universal sign of peace from the ancient Greeks. Greeks and Romans. And the olive branch basically was a sign of fertility and life and peace. And so what you see with the symbol of America, people have a choice, or governments have a choice. They can have peace when the beak of the eagle is facing towards the olive branch, or they can have war when the beak is facing towards the military and the aggression. So you can have peace or you can have war. And that's really symbolic. And I think this is really important for understanding, well, what is the olive branch petition? It's a sign of peace. It's a petition of the king to bring peace. So April was Lexington. And the Second Continental Congress votes to send a olive branch to the king. In that meaning, we pledge loyalty and ask the king to intervene on our behalf to protect their rights. And again, this is a cool video. I'm not going to watch it with you, but you should watch it. It's only 2 minutes.
I would read into the record, for the benefit of those delegates who were unable to remain to close of session, the declarations and resolves of this first Congress. Resolved.
So again, they're meeting in Philadelphia in July. This is a very accurate depiction. This is what it looked like. You can still see this today if you go to Philadelphia. But the point that they're making here is that it was very hot and very boring and redundant, as all government officiating is. And so
the recent grievous acts imposed by Parliament on Massachusetts, we cannot submit, but in hopes that our fellow subjects in Great Britain will restore to us happiness and prosperity, rather than support the Massachusetts militia, we have agreed to pursue the following peaceable measures. To publish a statement of the aforesaid to the inhabitants of British America.
Who need no reminders.
2, to enter into a non-importation, non-consumption, and non-exportation agreement of British goods.
Which no one will honor.
And 3, to prepare a loyal address to His Majesty.
Which His Majesty will not read.
This Congress stands adjourned.
The business of this Congress being concluded, all delegates are respectfully reminded.
Okay, well, this is not a good one. I'm sorry, but there is a better part. So what they're doing is they're sending an olive branch to the king to say, please don't fight us. We are loyal. Let us get along. It doesn't work, of course. And I think the other thing you get from that video is that they are not talking independence in 75. In 75, they're going, look, do we really want a war with England? We're outnumbered. Don't have good chances of winning. They want to solve their problems and go back to the way it was, where they were in charge. But King George says, no, we're not doing that. All right, here's a good essay question. We've already seen this once, but I want to reinforce it. In 1754 to 74, a profound alteration, means change, in relationship occurred between the American colonists and their mother country. This changing relationship became profoundly obvious to both parties with the opening of hostilities, Lexington and Concord. Identify and explain the key factors which brought about this changing relationship using your own knowledge in the documents. Okay, so this would be for a DBQ. So what were the factors that created the change? So you do a brainstorm. Well, what were the factors? French and Indian War, boom, is a big factor. Debt by England is a big factor. New taxes, new controls. You could say the end of salutary neglect. And these are all factors that the Americans are reacting to. And so with the end of salutary neglect, what do we get? Resistance. And it goes, that's the timeline. Grenville, Townshend, and North. The war starts in 75, 63, and then you have the French and Indian War, 54. Do you get it? And so gradually we are going up this slope, more and more hostility and conflict, boom, and we get the war. Alrighty, so let's keep going. So again, your job with this essay is to take all of those factors and create a split complex thesis that we've already talked about with an A, a B, and a C, plus a D. Were there political factors? Were there economic factors? Were there social factors? Or you can be more specific. French and Indian War, English debt, and American resistance. And those would be your anchors. This is body paragraph 1. This is body paragraph 2. This is body paragraph 3. And then again, you have your topic sentence matches whatever this is here is going to go there. Do you follow? That's the structure for this essay. It's a typical 5-paragraph persuasive essay. Okay. Well, just try to do it. Try to do it. It's not that difficult. So as we continue, there was a huge amount of people in the colonies that were not supportive of the revolution. Those people were Loyalists, or Tories is what they were known, or as a derogatory term, means thieves. The Loyalists, about 60% of the population in 75 were Loyalists. So what you're going to see is, if you look at this, if this is 1775, and then we go to 1783, the number of Loyalists will reduce. So right here we have a high level of Loyalists in 75, and gradually that number is going to go down as we get to the end of the war. So right now there's 60% at least. After the war, you'll have 80,000 colonists will leave. There will be about 2 million people in the colonies at around 1783. 50,000 will fight for the British over the course of these 10 years, almost, or that the war lasts. Number of Loyalists declines over time, 30% at the end of the revolution. So I think you got to know the odds are against the Patriots. There's tons of people that were loyal that didn't want to support the Patriots. How did we pay for the war? First of all, it was extremely difficult. Congress could not lay taxes. Remember, these people hate taxes. They had to ask the states, requisition the states for money voluntarily. The states voluntarily paid. They sold bonds. This would be like investments. These are certificates. These are going to be important after the war. They're going to come and pay these. These are going to be important. So make sure we pay attention to these certificates now. We issued paper money, which was worthless. We borrowed tons of money from other nations like France and the Netherlands. So we borrowed money, we issued paper money, and we sold these bonds. And so we got 1, 2, 3, and a little bit of taxes, 4. 4 ways. The British had tremendous advantages during the war, and a lot of disadvantages. So the big advantage, they had a massive navy. They could bring equipment and troops. They had the best equipped and trained army. They had trained, disciplined soldiers. They had resources. They had lots of resources. And they had a coherent command, which means a clear command structure. They had some good generals, but, not ideal, wasn't great. Those are advantages. Disadvantages. 3,000 miles from their home territory. They did not have enough popular support. And again, support for the British goes down over time because they were mean. And there were a lot of leadership mistakes. Their leadership was problematic. They should have won the war very early. In the very beginning, they should have won. And they didn't because they weren't aggressive enough and they didn't attack properly. The Americans had advantages and disadvantages. Number one, we're fighting on our own soil. We knew the terrain. We had significant support. It's really difficult to control a massive territory. The British had to control tons of territory to win the war. We were fighting a defensive battle, or defensively, and you need a lot more troops when you're fighting attacking versus defending. We get more and more support. Support starts low, but it gradually increases as time goes on. More and more people support it. We get foreign aid. That is the biggest one. France will join the war. We don't give up. That's another one. We stay and fight. And then lastly, George Washington was both an advantage and a disadvantage. Washington's personality, Washington's status, his leadership makes the difference. He stays. Without Washington, we don't have success. Without the French, you don't have success. So we should really have lost this. And it is a miracle that we did win. Disadvantages. We will chronically be short of supplies and short of weapons and short of soldiers. Washington is not the best general in the world. He is not. Every major battle he fights, he loses pretty much. So he is not known for great military success. He's successful because we survive. Finances, we are always short of money. And then we were divided because we had lots of loyalists. So we should really lose this war on paper, and it's a miracle that we do win. So we're going to talk about these 3 phases now. So there were the 3 phases. First is New England, early in the war. And then you get the middle colonies is the middle of the war. And then they go south, which will be the end of the war. Remember, the war goes from 75 to 83. The first is in the north till about, 76. And then it goes into the middle colonies where they take Pennsylvania and New Jersey, etc. And then they go south. Here trying to destroy their status in the South. So I think it's pretty basic. We get Bunker Hill in the first phase. And then we get New York. We get defeated massively in New York. And then we get a couple of victories. We invade, the British invade Canada. We invade Canada early on and are defeated here. It's really bad. Then this major success. We defeat a whole army when the British invade from Canada. We survive Valley Forge. And then the southern phase. Oh, by the way, here's a fun thing to do is to look at music of the Revolution. I encourage you to do that. Here's a cool link from constitutionalfacts.com. There's all kinds of Revolutionary War music. I don't know. It's kind of interesting. You should take a look at it. And then more war. I really don't have a lot of time to go into all of this. If you have questions, we can go through it. Bunker Hill, remember, is a great victory. Just to show you, Boston, remember, it looks like this. That's Cape Cod. And then Boston is like that. So Boston is here. Basically, the colonists surround Boston, and the British have to leave because the guys who start this war are from Massachusetts and New England. Remember, those are the Puritans. Those are the hardcore, moralistic society, and they were the ones who started the revolution. And I want you to imagine Boston Red Sox fans. You guys ever heard of the Boston Red Sox? Those were the those were the baseball team for Boston. And if you've ever been to a Boston Red Sox versus the Yankee game, those guys, they hate each other and they're violent. And it reminds me of these Patriots. They were these sons of liberty. They were the rabble. And they are tough people. So we will just take a look at that. I think that's kind of an interesting thing. Washington meets Adams. Oh, let's look at this video here for a minute, shall we? Let's do this.
Diplomacy is seduction in another guise, Mr. Adams. One improves with practice.
This is a great scene.
Mr. Harrison, Mr. Lee.
Okay, so this is Benjamin Franklin. This is Richard Henry Lee. This is the delegation from Virginia.
Mr. Lee, you are said to be Cicero of Virginia.
Like you, Mr. Adams, we are arming ourselves for our own defense. Beyond that, the Virginia Convention has given us no instructions. It was up to myself, Colonel Washington.
Oh, yes, indeed. Colonel Washington.
There he is. My hero.
Good morning to you, Colonel. Mr. Adams.
Listen to this.
You are in mourning.
From Massachusetts, Mr. Adams. An attack made on one of our sister colonies is an attack made on all of us.
If only all of the Congress were of your sentiments, sir.
I am prepared to raise 1,000 men, subsist them at my own expense, and march them myself to the relief of Boston.
Well, we may yet have need of your generosity.
Not generosity, Mr. Adams. Duty.
Duty. That was Benjamin Franklin in the other scene. So it's totally cool. George Washington, man, you got to know George Washington. He is special. He is not just the simple slave owner, okay? He's much more complex. There's nothing simple about history. It's very, very complex. He is really, really responsible for the society that we've created. Even with all the problems we have, he was a man of integrity and honor and duty, and he wasn't corrupt in any way. Problematic slave owners, all slave owners were problematic. But yes, he did do positive things. All right, Bunker Hill. There's another link to Bunker Hill. What's on this?
Mama!
I pray they are.
Take a look. This is, again, from that Adams. There's Bunker Hill. Isn't that cool? All right, I'm not going to dwell on that, but look at that link if you can. So Bunker Hill, they march up the hill in these wonderful lines, and the Americans were fortified up here. It is a victory in terms of We kill more of them than us, but we do lose the hill. The British end up leaving Boston. This is Fort Ticonderoga. This is the location of it right here in upstate New York. A fun fact, this is smallpox. This is the Americans inoculate. The first inoculations, basically they take some of the active virus and they dig it into the skin so that you have a small dose of the disease and you can build antibodies, etc. We're learning about viruses and infections and things of that nature now with this pandemic. Mid-Atlantic, okay, you'll go through this. You got to know about the Hessians. The English use mercenaries. A mercenary is a hired soldier. 18,000 Hessians come to the Americas to fight for the British. It was much cheaper to pay professionals. They were professional soldiers than to raise an army. And so they just paid the army that was already established. Hessians are Germans, by the way. Here's examples of the Hessians. The Hessians were horrible to the population. They turned tons of loyalists against the British government because they were, they didn't take prisoners. They executed and bayoneted their prisoners. They were, occupying New Jersey, and it was really, really bad with New Jersey and how they treated the population and pillaging and raping, and that goes with all wars that have these kind of problems. This is George Washington at the Battle of Trenton, where he crosses the Delaware River and he surprise attack at Christmas, 1776, and they capture a Hessian army and a British army. So that's a great victory. Again, this is a classic painting, heroic George Washington. This is totally not accurate, but it's a great, great picture, image of Washington. And you'll notice that Washington has defeated most of the battles, Brandywine, Germantown, and then we get a victory. This was not Washington's victory. Washington was not here. It was Horatio Gates, who was another hero. Another big hero of Saratoga was Benedict Arnold, who becomes a traitor later on in the war, but he was a great hero in this battle. You have to know this battle because this battle is a turning point in how we get the French. So you got to know this battle. The French enter the war because the Americans win this major battle. Okay, let's look at this map for a second. Phase 1 is up here, New England. Phase 2 is here, New York and Pennsylvania. 2. And then phase 3, the British come south. So now I want to talk about New York for a minute because we kind of skipped over that. New York, we try to fortify New York City. Washington goes when basically the British have to evacuate up to Nova Scotia. The British evacuate because they were surrounded here at Boston. And then the British come back at New York. And they invade New York. Washington knew they were coming. He tried to fortify New York. Right here. Let's see, where's New York? He tries to fortify New York. Remember, Manhattan Island is right here. There's Brooklyn is here. Manhattan is here. We get our butts kicked. We should have lost the war here in New York. the Washington had to retreat, and he goes down here to New Jersey and then Pennsylvania later. We should have lost here. The general of the Howe, General Howe, the Howe brothers were the British generals. They were not aggressive enough. They did not pursue Washington, but the war should have ended there. Washington is smart enough to leave New York. He wanted to fight there, but it was hopeless, and he was smart enough to retreat. He retreats into New Jersey down here and survives. The British only win if they can destroy Washington's army. And again, this is what's going on here. 19,000 troops retreats. We lost a ton of troops. We had thousands of prisoners were taken in New York, and many of them die. The whole story is very, very interesting. Alrighty, so that's pretty much the British again leave. They leave Boston early in the war, and then they come back in 76 to New York, and we're in here the middle phase where they're chasing Washington around Pennsylvania, and then they don't get him, and then they move south and have a lot of battles in the south, and eventually we just keep surviving, and we don't lose, we don't give up. All right, we're continuing. Well, I think that's it for the war. Please ask questions if you're unclear. We're going to continue with these questions next time. Thanks so much.
Sunday comes and all the papers say,
I hope this is working for you. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time. All right, bye-bye.